Well, and it looks like we are live. Let's double check here, make sure everything's working on YouTube. And we are live here. And it looks like we're good on X and, of course, in the chat room. So, good evening, everyone. It is, of course, Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. And this is our week's live chat. So we have a couple things to cover. I mean, admittedly, it is pretty quiet out there, no major severe weather events, but we do have the potential for a pretty good rainstorm that is starting to evolve for this weekend. And really, we're starting to narrow down as we get closer to the storm from what was a all weekend event to something that's a little bit more concentrated, more towards Friday night into Saturday morning, with just some raw conditions for the rest of the weekend. So while it's not a washout, it's not going to be the best weekend either. We're also going to cover and talk about right now the book of the week. This book is called The Field Guide to Weather by Ryan Henning. You can get this on Amazon. It's a pretty good book. I'm just going to hold it up here. It's your guide to watching clouds and understanding the weather. Basically, what you'll find there is a simple introduction to basic meteorology. So this is great for middle school kids, even like let's say fifth, sixth grade on up through let's say sophomore in high school. A guide to individual weather topics from clouds, to tornadoes, details on how to read weather maps and radar, and essential information about what is a weather watch, or warnings, weather safety tips, stuff like that. And even they even show you how to build a home weather station. So you can get this book for about $36, $37 on Amazon and a few other locations. Probably be able to find it in some bookstores as well. It's a nice little beginner's book. It really is. And it has great pictures in there, great illustrations. I would strongly suggest this as a first time book for a young meteorologist. Some of the topics, in the fourth grade, third grade, if you have a kid like that, might be a little bit advanced, but at the same time, it's good to challenge your kids, right? So it has a lot of great stuff, different types of barometers, different types of measuring devices in meteorology, recommendations of how to build weather stations, a lot of good stuff. They even go over stuff like dry lines, inverted troughs, what is free convection. So again, this is the field guide to the weather by Ryan Henning. I hope I pronounced that right. Ryan Henning, Henning. So that is our book of the week, and I hope you guys definitely pick that book up, especially if you have some young kids, maybe a niece, nephew, something of that nature. I think it's an excellent book to use. A little update on the CCM that I'm doing. It has been a real challenge and a good one at that. A lot of thoughts on ethics, which I'm really happy to see because I think one of the things that we have to make sure in a meteorological world, as with almost everything, is that our ethics on how to talk to the public, how to work with each other is extremely important. So I really like that about the test. And we're starting to get into some more technical matters. Again, I'm not going to tell you the specific questions, but I will say that it definitely challenges your understanding of atmospheric science. Even with it being an open book, it's still a heck of a challenge, and a lot of math is involved. So, if you are interested in becoming a CCM, I would strongly suggest boning up a bit on the multivariable calculus. It's been a real joy. It's probably why it takes about 90 days to get it done, because you might get a little bit of whiplash if you've been out of college for some time. So let's take a look at what is going on in the weather world. And here we have our upper level map. And as you can see, we continue on with the same theme. Now we're getting a weakening of the negative NAO here, and that has spawned the potential for a storm here. And predictably, the models at first were producing a scenario that was a little bit over the top, producing a 3 to 4 inch rainfall event and a prolonged heavy rainfall all weekend. We're starting to back away from that, but still a rather damp and unsettled weekend on the way. And then after that, the negative NAO pattern reloads again. But again, what this means in the spring is different than in the winter. This tells me, hey, look, watch out for a lot of backdoor cold fronts, a lot of maritime air masses. But this signal here tells me a lot of Pacific air masses are going to be on the way. So we've been pretty chilly this week. I think from here on out, again, we continue to moderate. In fact, I'm pretty confident I should be able to start putting the outside water out on my home by about April 15th, and maybe the weekend of Easter, and go from there. So I'm pretty confident on that respect. French vanilla coffee, by the way, tonight. So I think that we're going to definitely see that transition. But this type of signal here typically tells me we have a lot of Pacific air masses invading, a lot of backdoor cold fronts impeding that Pacific air mass. And every so often you'll get a tropical influence as well, as in tropical air mass, not tropical system. So this is a signal here for rainfall. And temperatures on average pushing more towards near normal. Considering the anomalies we've been dealing with over the past couple of days, we'll likely finish the month as below normal, but the anomalies really going from here on out after this week is pretty much near normal. So more seasonable conditions are definitely on the way. But this negative NAO regime is about to lose its legs. And the reason why is because of what's going on in the stratosphere. Now, this major stratospheric warming, which blew up our polar vortex, well, it is starting to wane, which we would expect because now we have more direct sunlight on the Earth, on the northern hemisphere. So you're warming evenly as you can, the northern hemisphere and the stratosphere. So the temperatures themselves aren't exactly cooling a little bit, but it's more due to the fact that because of even warming, you're losing your gradient and you're losing your high level of anomalies here. And so as the anomalies fade, so will the high latitude blocking. So we will see a gradual weakening of the negative NAO influence as we move forward through the rest of spring. And by the summer, it should be negligible. So let's say like late May, early June. The other thing we're going to have to keep an eye on, that I'm going to be watching very carefully, is the cold signal that is going to start to redevelop here. Why am I worried about the cold signal? Okay, so in the stratosphere, if you have a cold stratosphere, that means it contracts, and that allows the 500 millibar heights to rise. So one thing I'm going to be watching for is as we get closer to the summer, a stronger sustained signal for a Bermuda high. The long range monthly European and the CFS is strongly suggesting a Bermuda high and just waves of moisture streaming up the coast. And of course, some people jump to the conclusion that that will all be tropical systems. I mean, you can't rule it out, but this could easily be a signal for stationary frontal boundaries and waves of thunderstorms. But in order to trust whether that signal is something that's to be trusted, we want to find something in the stratosphere to start to kick off that signal because the tropical influence right now is muted and likely to remain so. So your tropical driving force is going to be the MJO for the most part, which right now is in a neutral state or what they call the circle of death. So, and the MJO could be pretty volatile from week to week, month to month. So it's hard to use that as a seasonal signal. And you don't really have a El Nino on the way. There's no real support for that just yet. Maybe in October, maybe you start seeing a signal, but nothing for the summer. So then what you have to do is kind of look for very weak signals in the stratosphere. And so what I'm going to be watching for is to see whether or not we start getting more and more colder anomalies, because that would support a contraction of the stratosphere and expansion of the troposphere. If we expand the troposphere, that means the 500 millibar heights will build. If the 500 millibar heights will build over the Western Atlantic, there's your Bermuda high signal, and your long-range model guidance can verify. If you don't have that, then the long-range model guidance will fail. So This is where we have to look for that signal here before jumping to conclusions. So I'm going to be watching that over the next couple of weeks. As far as our upcoming weekend, let's take a look at some of the observations here. Right now it's pretty quiet. High pressure is in control. Temperatures are in the mid to upper 30s over your higher elevations. Upper 30s to lower 40s over the lower valleys. Lower to mid 40s in a lot of the suburbs. And lower to mid 40s, even some upper 40s in some urban areas. So overall, pretty seasonable. A little chilly, but nothing too unusual. You see on the WeatherTap radar and surface map, though, trouble is brewing. Here is our storm that's starting to organize. And really, it does have a pretty good amount of precipitation with it. You have a nice low pressure system out here. Here's the next one back here. And notice it's kind of like this stretching, right? See, this trough out here is kind of the leading edge. What does that really look like? What's really happening here? Well, let me refresh this so we can get a better view graphically. Okay, so this is the long wave trough. Here's our block up here. In fact, let me see if I could draw this out here. So let's see how well I do. Okay, so there's our block up here, right? And that block has this signal right here that is trying to drop into this base of the trough. Now, when it drops in, it has nowhere to go because of this whole setup out here, right? So let me pull up a blue pen. So this whole setup up here sets up your block. So it can't exit. So as a result, this drops in and starts to form a low. And that low then starts driving moisture into our neck of the woods. Now, the question is, how long does this block stick around? And because it's starting to weaken, this block heads east. So as a result, this low pressure system can exit out. That's why we're moving away from the prolonged heavy rain event that was showing up in all of the guidance, but instead a more contracted, focused period of heavier precipitation. With the falling 500 millibar heights, you're going to see an expansion of the precipitation shield. And that is what we're starting to see here. So this isn't a lot of heavy rain. It's just the result of falling 500 millibar heights, allowing for the atmosphere to increase rising motion in the atmosphere and squeezing out whatever moisture is left in this environment. As this feature starts to tap into moisture from the Atlantic and from the Gulf, well, then that's when this precipitation shield starts becoming heavier. In the meantime, I'm sure you noticed the signal here for snow, and you're going to be seeing that quite a bit, especially for tomorrow evening and again to Friday night into Saturday morning. A lot of that snow signal is basically snow crystals at the base of the cloud that as they fall, they begin to melt. So it picks up graphically as snow because of the way that the Doppler effect bounces off those snowflakes, those ice crystals as they melt. By the time they reach the ground, it's rain for the most part. There is going to be a few isolated locations that will pick up a little bit of snow. I'm talking about a trace, maybe an inch on some cold surfaces. We'll talk about that in just a second. But you can see that whole environment starting to take shape. Now, what we're going to be watching for is that you see this right here. Let me use my pen again. Hopefully not. You see this right here? Okay, there's your leading edge of your developing upper level low. And out here is your moisture transport from the Atlantic. And what's going to happen is that as these two interact, you're going to get moisture get pulled right up into our area. And so that's what's going to support that evolution of the moderate to heavy rainfall. So what we're going to be watching for is that as that whole environment starts to develop, you're going to see showers growing in coverage. At first, it's going to be widely scattered with a lot of increase in clouds, then scattered showers, then widespread showers, and then a period of moderate to heavy rainfall. And then just as it built up, it's going to fall back. Widespread showers, scattered showers, isolated showers. Cloudy the entire time period, kind of raw out as well because you're going to have an easterly fetch to a northeasterly fetch. So not exactly the warmest weather conditions, but a lot of that will be tracked by watching what we call, you can go to the spc.noaa on the precipitable water, you can track it there, and also your 925 to 850 millibar moisture transport. That's what I'm using to look at this right now. And then you can use your precipitable water values to study the evolution. And what we're basically doing is taking this moisture source and driving it into the northern mid-Atlantic. So right now, we're starting to see as the sun sets, clouds are starting to increase. We can see that even better here on the infrared satellite picture. All your strong lifting, this is the leading edge, the eastern edge of our upper level low, which is up here, and our increasing lifting, and those clouds starting to invade. Here's our moisture source, our moisture transport from the subtropical jet stream getting ready to get tapped. And you can see that also here on the water vapor satellite picture really nicely. A nice little disturbance out here, plenty of sinking air down here. Here's our subtropical jet stream. Here comes our polar jet stream, our polar shortwave. There's our block, slowing everything down. And then this moisture field starts to interact with this moisture field. And you'll know when that happens because all this is going to light up and develop right over central New Jersey. So what does that look like on the model guidance? Well, let's take a look. First of all, we'll start at 500 millibars and then we'll work our way down. So at 500 millibars, you can see for tonight into tomorrow morning, there is our disturbance. Here's our block again. And tomorrow, that trough begins to tighten. It's still more of a positively tilted trough. And so as a result, you're getting moisture transport moving up the East Coast and enough divergence and diffluence and enough PVA to support increasing clouds and scattered showers. By the time we get to Friday afternoon, we start to cut this feature off. And so that leads to this little shortwave ridge over central Pennsylvania and divergence and diffluence along the coastal plain. So what this tells me is that a lot of cloud cover, increasing moisture fetch, more scattered showers, but not a steady rainfall. More of a unsettled weather conditions, hit and miss. You wouldn't want to cancel your plans, but you would want to be prepared to, just have an umbrella handy. Then Friday night, that's when the action starts to really pick up. Friday night to Saturday morning, this starts to fully close off. You can see the strong PVA here, but your divergence and diffluence setting up right here. It's not Wiseman and stands out. You have to really focus on the details here. So this signal here, and you see this little bend right here. Okay, so this tells me that your best lifting at 500 millibars is going to be focused on the coastal plain, not so much over the interior. The 500 millibar low fully closes off. That function cools the atmosphere just enough to open up the potential for your snowfall to show up over the Poconos and Catskills. Again, not looking for a lot, but I'm kind of going over the process here. So why am I expecting after Saturday morning for everything to back off and while we'll still be unsettled, not a complete washout for the rest of this weekend? Well, it's because of the position of the upper level low. It moves due east. In previous model guidance, it was basically meandering and lifting up through either coastal New Jersey or just to the south of Long Island. In this case, it's moving east. Why is that important? Well, what this does is that it forces all your strongest lifting out here, residual lifting over the coastal plain. So this typically leads to a lot of low clouds, drizzle, scattered showers, but all your strong moisture transport, all your strong lifting at the upper levels is all focused off the coast. So this is more of a scattered shower, unsettled type weather pattern. At 850 millibars, same setup, but why do I think we're going to see steady, moderate to heavy rain on Friday night to Saturday morning? Because of this signal right there. See this lifting northward, backing right into the coast? That's going to be a nice slug of moisture and lifting as our 850 millibar low matures and intensifies. And that time period, that little swing right there, Combined with the upper level divergence of 500 millibars and good jet stream dynamics, all focuses the potential for some widespread moderate to heavy rainfall, especially over the coastal plain. Notice that lifting kind of fades over the interior. So again, we don't see strong lifting to cool the column of the layer significantly. You get to around freezing, but the snow growth is very weak. I'm trying to make the case via physics and via meteorological analysis rather than using snow maps. Because if you use snow maps, someone's going to put out like a 4-inch snowfall amount over the Poconos, and that's going to fail. So I'm trying to walk through as to why. Now, again, much like 500 millibars, look where that 850 millibar low goes. It goes due east. So again, this is a signal where I got moisture coming in from the Canadian Maritimes, wrapping around. Yeah, definitely cloudy, definitely scattered showers, but all your best lifting is out over the Atlantic. So that looks like it's going to be the theme. This right here, this is called integrated vapor transport. Now, the reason why this is really cool to use is that you could track how the moisture in the atmosphere as a whole is being transported. So the brighter the colors, let's say when you get into red and yellows or yellows and reds, that's a strong signal. So you want to kind of use it as a way to say, okay, this is when the moisture is going to be transported the most. So we start off on Thursday with light to moderate moisture transport here. This is enough to support scattered showers. Then we shift off to Friday afternoon, evening, not too bad. Cloudy, widely scattered showers. But Friday night, here we are, Friday night into Saturday morning, let's say from 10 p.m. to about 2 a.m. Look at this strong moisture transport. Very strong coming up the coast and then bending off into the New Jersey coast. So this is a pretty good moisture transport signal. And so this tells me, yeah, there's going to be plenty of support in terms of your moisture transport. Now, the difference between this with a half an inch to an inch and a half type of rainfall to a 2 or 3 inch rainfall would be if this got tapped in because this upper level low was stronger. But that's not going to happen. That's clearly not going to happen with the way that this whole pattern is evolving. So, why do I think that the shower support starts to collapse after Saturday morning? Well, take a look at your moisture transport. It's pretty weak. So what this type of signal is well, a lot of drizzle, a few scattered showers. Again, not a washout, but again, not the type of weekend you'd want to go outside all weekend or have a picnic or go to a baseball game. It's going to be raw and cool and cloudy, and every so often you'll get some spitting showers and drizzle and just raw and ugly out. Now, you combine that with the precipitant water values, you can see when you have your highest precipitant water values are Saturday morning, and then you get this lower influence setting up on Sunday. Very weak, but still present. So, again, this tells me that most of the weekend's just going to be raw and just cool and, well, kind of disgusting out. But the heaviest rainfall looks to be Friday into Saturday because that's when you have your strongest moisture transport. So that's when you have your strongest lifting, your strongest moisture transport. What about this snow idea that some people are running around? I gotten 6 emails about the potential for snow for northwestern New Jersey, for the Poconos, for the Catskills. What's the actual situation here? Well, this is on midnight on Saturday, well, roughly 2 a.m. So 2 hours after midnight. And notice the 850 millibar temperatures are at 0 to -2. Now, even in January, this would be considered an extremely marginal environment. Even if it was midnight on January 10th, this would still be very marginal. So if you forget the seasons, forget what time of the year it is, you forget the boundary layer conditions, and just look at 850 millibars, this is an environment where your snow ratio is above 10 to 1. It's more like 8 to 1. So you take that factor, so you got to slash your snow maps that you might be using, and then you add in the fact that you have a moisture saturated atmosphere. So you don't have a lot in terms of cooling via evaporational cooling or anything of that nature. So what you see is what you get, right? So this is extremely marginal and is going to be a influenced by rising and sinking air pretty well. So this is a rain snow signal. And then as we move forward, you can see it continues to moderate. So you take that and then you take a look at your boundary layer temperatures. Now, you do have to include the season. Now, granted, this is happening at 2 a.m. And at 2 a.m., you have your temperatures basically between 33 and 37. Now, even in January, these temperatures would be too warm for much in the way of accumulation. Your coldest point, let's say about 5 a.m., you're between 33 and 34. Not very impressive. Again, this is why you don't use snow maps. What we're doing here, we're looking at the boundary layer, we're looking at the mid levels, we're looking at the lifting. The best lifting is to your south. So why would you need that lifting? Even in the dead of winter, in order to have strong cooling of your column, you need rising air because rising air cools. In this case, your strongest lifting is on the coastal plains. You're not really getting that support. So, at best, what you have here is an environment of wet snow, very, very wet, with some raindrops mixed in. This is not a snow accumulation event. Maybe if you have like some bushes, maybe on some car tops, stuff like that, cold surfaces, you pick up a dusting to maybe an inch. But roadways, anything else like your driveway, it's just going to remain wet. So over the next 90 hours, we could take a look at our event here. Again, there's our scattered showers. There's a little bit of that higher elevation snow. I'm thinking Poconos and Catskills above 1,500 feet. I really don't see this much for northwest New Jersey, except for the extreme highest locations. And even that is going to be very much limited. And then here comes our steady rainfall Friday night to Saturday. By the time we get to roughly 10 a.m. on Saturday, what you're going to see is a lot of these showers, that moderate to heavy rainfall breaking up, and more scattered, showery drizzle, very light rainfall lingering on, and that continues on through Saturday. And then Sunday is going to be more cloudy with better chance for showers on the coast. The further west you are, the more likely you'll see still cloudy skies, but just isolated showers and maybe a spit of drizzle here and there. So the whole weekend isn't a washout, but certainly not the best conditions for outdoor activities. And so what I did with my map here, and for premium members, you can zoom in on this. I've had this map up for about 24 hours. Along the coast here, I am a little concerned about some minor coastal flooding. Again, looking at between a half an inch and a half of rain for the entire forecast period, maybe a few spots up to 2 inches. The bulk of this, again, is going to be on Friday night into Saturday morning. With the persistent easterly wind, I could definitely see some minor coastal flooding in these red areas. A little bit further west, same forecast as this, half an inch and a half, isolated 2 inches possible, steady easterly wind. But again, because we're further away, not a coastal flooding threat. And then up here's our snow threat, traced to an inch at most on cold surfaces above 1,500 feet. So that is where we stand in our forecast. Now it is that time of night to answer your questions. Again, as always, we will start with the live chat, premium live chat. And then after that, we'll check out to see what we have in social media. If we don't have any questions, then we end early. If we do, then we just keep on rolling until we answer all the questions. So let's see if we have anything. Now, I know that card is out for tonight. Hopefully, let's all send some good wishes for him as he's handling some stuff. So it is pretty quiet in the chat room right now. I know that Card often asks a ton of questions. So let's see what we got in social media. Well, someone's been very, very active, but let's see if we can. Yeah. Some people, I always say, if you need attention, join a drama class or do improv. You get a lot of attention with improv. I know, I did it in high school. I was very bad at it, but it was a lot of fun. Um, I got the book Field Guide to the Weather by National Ordnance Society. That's great, Larry. That is awesome. I hope you enjoyed the book. Let's see. New York City went to 31 degrees this morning. Is that very late in the season for for a reading so low? It's not record. It's been colder, but certainly it's kind of pushing the below normal anomalies. That is for sure. The coldest I've seen it freezing like 31, 32 in New York City and the suburbs as late as mid-May. And it was not enjoyable. I can tell you that. Um, April 9th has reported an inch or more of snow in Central Park in 5 years. The most times of any date in April. The last time it happened was in 2000. That is true. I thought a Bermuda high was conducive to relatively dry, hot weather. No, no, no. A Bermuda high, well, just think about the word Bermuda high. Well, its circulation takes tropical moisture from the Gulf Coast and from the Caribbean and drives it up the East Coast. Now, where it kind of gets dry and hot is more towards maybe the Ohio River Valley, where you're getting more of an influence from the Mississippi River Valley. But even then, it still can be pretty humid. But for us, because we're to the east of the Appalachians, we get a lot of moisture driven northward into our neck of the woods from the Gulf Coast. Now, for a dry, hot weather pattern, what you want to see is a strong ridge that is centered over the Tennessee River Valley, and we get more of a west southwesterly flow, so you're getting an air mass coming in from the plains, and that is a dry, hot weather pattern. Stephen, do you see some pattern for warming? This cold and snow this far north is a bit much this time of year. I do think we see a gradual. I think as the high latitude blocking pattern shifts, as we move on through May, I think we gradually go to near normal, and I think May has a good chance of being above normal. Let's see. I will put it this way: anyone that's doing any sports activity Saturday morning is going to be dealing with some very rough conditions. Now, the rain will be tapering off on Saturday morning. I think the worst conditions are going to be, let's say, from about 10 p.m. Friday to about 4 or 5 a.m. Saturday. However, um, it's still going to be awfully damp, awfully wet, awfully raw. I can't rule out it won't be dry. I can guarantee that. I don't expect it to be widespread heavy rain, but it's certainly going to be rather damp for any type of sport that's out there. So I definitely would. Yeah, you might want to have backup plans. I had a couple people already email me about little league games and soccer games and all this other stuff. And my general rule is this: um, the field is definitely going to be damp and wet and muddy. That is for sure. For some people, that doesn't matter. For others, it does. So it won't be, I cannot say that it will be dry conditions, but it also won't be a driving downpour either. The showers will start to break up as we move later on in the morning. How did we get all that snow April 6th, 1982? Okay, so you see the scenario we have right now with the upper level low forming, right? So what happened in 82 is that upper level low formed just as southwest of us, but instead of pushing east, it actually intensified and bombed out right over us. And that process leads to a lot of rising air. And so you had already a cold environment at the mid levels, not impressively cold, but cold enough. And you had a tremendous rising motion in the atmosphere. So, as a result of that rising motion, it cooled the entire column. Then the precipitation started as frozen towards the when the sun was down in the early morning hours, and it set the base for accumulation to begin, and then the lifting and everything combined, and there's your snowfall. Now, of course, with this time of year being the way it is, once the upper level low left, the support for snow left with it, and it rapidly melted as temperatures rebounded. Be our last. I wouldn't say it'd be the last one, but we're definitely going to be some more cool mornings. I definitely expect that. Let's see here. Oh, Card's back. Hey, all right. Good evening, Card. All right, let's see what we got here. I don't want to hear words wind chill again until late October, early November. Yeah, I don't blame. Look, I'm not a fan of this either. Believe me, I understand. Bermuda High that push hot, humid weather up the Atlantic coast stinks, plain and simple. Yeah, it can be. Look, I'm Italian. I am not a fan of hot and humid weather, and neither are my clothes or my dry cleaning bill. So yeah, I'm not a fan of it at all. But it does. There is growing support for it. Any flooding risks from this weekend? I think some minor coastal flooding, especially with the persistent easterly wind, especially during high tides. Um, as far as river flooding or urban flooding, I don't think so. If we had actually pushed it at 2 to 3 inch level, then yeah, that could have been something that's a little bit more touchy. But the way that the storm is looking now, I don't think we'll see much in the way of type of urban flooding or, excuse me, river flooding. If I recall correctly, it was very warm the day before the blizzard of 1988. What were the conditions that caused such warmth to a major blizzard? Well, we touched on it a little bit. It was a strong upper level low that formed. This time of year, the ability for upper level lows to significantly adiabatically cool an atmosphere is really impressive. It's kind of a unique feature. You really don't see a lot of it in winter. You I never see it in the summer, but the the type of event where you get that strong upper level low, that's a different story. 1888, same thing, where essentially that strong upper level low. Now, again, obviously we didn't have the maps or the observations, but the nature in which the storm evolved, that's how we know. So it went from a heavy rainstorm to a heavy snowstorm. Why did that happen? Because the upper level dynamics cause falling, and the falling 500 millibar heights leads to a lot of rapid cooling. Let's see, what else do we got here? Mm-hmm. First 90-degree day. I wouldn't be surprised if it's June. I wouldn't say the drought's over yet, but we're moving in the right direction. We still got some work to do. But this weather pattern we have is perfect for getting over the drought properly. You know, we're saturating the water table. My landscaping is responding, which I'm very happy about. Thank you very much. So it's alive. Yes, I literally ran out there. I was like screaming, "It's alive!" Thank God, because you put all that money in all those bushes and trees and stuff. You don't want everything dead within a year. So I was very happy about that, obviously. Um, but we're climbing out. We're not there yet. Do the greater differences in air masses help fuel upper level lows in March and April? Yes, that's part of it. You have very warm and you still have strong-ish polar air masses, so it creates a greater thermal gradient in the mid and upper levels, which leads to those powerful storms. You can pull that off in the winter as well, but more likely in February you could start to really pull that off because you still have pretty strong tropical air masses starting to bubble up in the Gulf of Mexico or America, whatever the hell you want to call it, and then around the Caribbean. But March and April are kind of those funky months where you can get slapped and really surprised. First hurricane. Oh, geez, I don't. I could say our first tropical system, I wouldn't be. I'd keep an eye on a lot of spin ups off the East Coast this year if you have that Bermuda High in place, and a lot of like those new type of 3 day or 2 day tropical systems that get named. Definitely see that in June. Probably, depending on what we're seeing here, most likely July. I don't think this is going to be a blockbuster season. I like the average, near average. I'm still working on the forecast with everything else I have on my plate as well. But overall, I don't see this as any type of blockbuster season or crazy season. Average. We're going to have our stretches where it gets very quiet, and then we'll have our stretches where it gets very active, most likely in September. But overall, average. It's cold left in the tank. I bet. I bet there's plenty of cold air left in Maine. And with all due respect, you can keep it up there. I am not interested. See, I'm very much a seasonal person, and I have a basic rule. When baseball starts, winter's over. And old man winter needs to leave. Baseball started. The Mets are kicking butt. Yes, granted, they lost today, but they can't win every game. So it's time for winter to go. Go away. But sometimes the weather does not listen to what I want. So you hear me? I don't control the weather. Thank you very much. Let's see what I wish. If I did, I'd have so much fun. Let's see what other questions. Anything on X or all right. And then we have a jet flying right over us. That's always fun. I don't know about you guys, but apparently there are a lot of jets moving over Freehold lately. And I'm talking about like military jets. It's like watching Top Gun over here. It gets really interesting. And we get the scary helicopters. They're definitely military helicopters because the hospital ones, they go off in that direction towards the hospital, and you can tell what they are. Anything on? Oh, all right. Let's see what we got here. Well, the Mets and Phillies can't play in the World Series because they're both in the National League, but certainly in the NLCS, definitely a possibility. I could definitely see that. Don't need a lot of hurricanes for them to have an impact. Oh, that's definitely true. Look, when it comes to tropical systems, you only need one or two, and that's all. Um, One thing that could fundamentally change our weather pattern is the impact of a tropical system producing very heavy rain. When I say tropical system, notice I'm not saying hurricane. You could have a remnant low drop like 3 to 6, 7 inches of rain over the region, leading to massive flooding and fundamentally changes the whole nature of the water table and influences on further convective systems because now you no longer have that gradient of drier weather and moist weather and drier and moist boundary layers. So it could really do a number. But, like I said, you only need one. Hopefully, in my case, I mean, look, one was enough for me. After experiencing Sandy, I don't need any more direct hits. Thank you very much. I'm pretty much done. I know there's some people, for whatever reason, root for this, root for a major system, hurricane or whatnot. Look, these people, look, maybe you didn't experience it, but I have no need or want to have no power for 7 days, cold weather that followed, and a lot of angry people at gas stations just trying to get gas. That was destruction, and then your house gets and all that other stuff. I don't need it. Give me a nice light to moderate rainfall. That's why I like winter storms better. Because look, you get the snow, you dig out. Okay, it can be a nuisance, but you can live. But in terms of hurricanes or tornadoes, no, thank you. And I experienced, man, the one tornado that really scared me. I was in Oklahoma. It was an F5, and there was really nowhere to go. Like you can go to a shelter, but really, you know, that was some terrifying stuff. Speaking of jets, how do you feel about the increase in visible or clear air turbulence? Well, I don't know. I don't really have a feeling about it yet. So, any preliminary thoughts on summer temps and precipitation? You mentioned a strong Bermuda high. Sounds humid. What's the influence of Enso this year, if any? Um, I'm still working on the summer forecast, but as I said when I was starting out, you might have missed it, David. I'm watching the evolution of the stratosphere and the potential for a colder stratosphere over the Atlantic. And if that happens, then we lock in our Bermuda high. If it doesn't, then a lot of that long range model guidance is going to fail. So I'm watching that very carefully. Not really seeing a strong tropical forcing influence like from Ensno. It's not really standing out all that much. You might get like an El Nino signal or at least a warm neutral signal towards the end of summer, but I'm not seeing any, even in the subsurface or the pressures or anything, any type of signal of shifting to any any feature, right? So this might be a summer with a lot of muted features, and the MJO is probably going to create a lot of havoc as a result. And we're going to have to watch it week to week. It's not going to be easy in terms of forecasting um, for the season if the MJO is going to be all over the place. So that is something I'm definitely going to be watching for. It's going to be a bit of a challenge. Let's see here. Any preliminary? Let's see. Answered that. Am I happy that Yeshiviv broke its 100 game losing streak? I mean, I heard about it. I'm not happy or upset either way, but I'm sure they are. I mean, that's a lot. 100 games. God, that's God. You know what? Is that going to go into the Baseball Hall of Fame? Are they a professional team or a school team? I'm not sure, but that's crazy. If the Bermuda High sets up, if we get more humid weather patterns, you don't. Mm, it won't be your traditional heat wave like 95 to 100. The problem with humid air masses is that it could be 88, but it feels constantly like 93. So it feels like you're in a heat wave, even though you're not officially in a heat wave. I definitely see a lot of that. A college team. All right. I'm glad that they finally won. Did they have the same coach for every one of those games? 100 games. I can't imagine losing 100 straight games. God, isn't there like a mercy rule? Jeez, that's insane. God. I mean, I don't even think the 90s Mets were that bad. Or the 62 Mets for that matter. That's crazy. Wow. Well, I'm glad they finally won. Let's see. Any residual water vapor impact on the stratosphere? I recall previous years that it helped make conditions more El Nino like, even during the last La Nina. That's starting to actually fade now. So we're seeing less and less of an influence of that as it's getting stretched out throughout the atmosphere. So I don't think it'll have as strong of a signal as we've seen the past couple of years. Um, so I'm kind of backing away from the influence of that. I thought that only the Washington Generals lost that many games in a row. I think in terms of professional teams, maybe. Um, God, I can't even imagine what that's like being on a team that loses 100 straight. I mean, at that point, you're probably so worried about losing that you start making errors just because you're trying to be too perfect, I'm guessing. That's crazy. Wow. The team they beat lost 47 in a row. That league's got to get broken up. That's bad baseball. I got no words for you on that. Wow. That's when you just got to get some ringers, at this point. Did like what the Simpsons did, you know, bring in some pros. Bring in an old pro. There you go. Yes, exactly like my high school, where I was playing high school football, and I was a freshman. Okay, I played all 4 years. I was a freshman though, and I played this team, which I will not name. Where again, I'm just let's see, I was about 13, going on 14, and here I am with a little scruff on my chin, all excited about growing what really wasn't a beard, but just kind of like some fuzz, uh, and yeah, I was like, I don't know, I was just entering all that, and then I'm facing this guy that literally was towering over me and had a full beard, and he's trying to tell me that he's a freshman. Really? I'm like, what? What in college? Holy crap. Yeah. So that's what they need. They need some ringers because I went and faced that team and my coach was like, why didn't you block him? I'm like, with what? My car? I mean, the guy was huge. He was like 3 times my size. His arm was the size of my leg, and he's supposed to be a freshman. Who are you kidding? So yeah, maybe that's what they need. They need some ringers. I don't know how they got snow in October 10th, 1979, because I don't know about that storm. I'm good with weather, but I'm not an encyclopedia. Uh, Yet I'm not that good. Brings to mind the Bugs Bunny cartoon where he's playing baseball against a team that used the tree trunks as bats. Yes, that's what that college team needs. Holy smokes! I can again. Boggles my mind. 100 wins. You should get an award just for playing every one of those games. Is there someone that played every one of those games? Holy smokes. Can you imagine? How do you find ways to lose 100 straight times? I mean, I know you could lose. Wow. I mean, I know you could lose 100 games in a season. Believe me, I'm a Mets fan. I know. Um, but 100 straight is just mind boggling. Oh my God. Oh, can you imagine just they gotta have sports psychologists, right? I mean, geez, that's just you should get free. The college support should be giving free psychology sessions after dealing with that. That's insane. Oh wow. Hey, maybe the Marlins could draft one of the kids. They could use it. Let's see. Do we have any more questions? Looks like we're doing pretty good. Well, I'm glad to see that Card is back. I hope everything is well. Of course, he's a big part of this live chat as always. I always appreciate his questions. I'm not really sure of anything in terms of um, the invisible or clear air turbulence. I have to research it and check up on it because I haven't really. I really haven't researched on it. I will say from a personal experience with all these jets moving around up around here lately, um, they fly a little bit too low, and it annoys me because I'm trying to watch a Godzilla movie and the roar from Godzilla gets interrupted by the jet, and I do not appreciate that. So whoever is doing that, please stop. And it looks like we got pretty much all the questions done, including social media. Do you have anything on X or Facebook? Okay, well then I think we'll call it a night. Oh, hold it. Oh, what? I don't know. I'm looking. Look, I just want to watch a Nerd Columbo. I've been we have been really involved in watching Columbo lately. I get a kick out of it. I got hooked on. Yeah, it's her fault. That's right. She said it. Is there any chance of flakes above 1,100 feet western Morris County? You might see some flakes, but nothing that accumulates. Uh, let's see here. I mean, you. This is what I would suggest if you're really interested in snow accumulation. Get yourself some ice cubes, right? Put them outside and then you might get some snow accumulation on the ice cubes. Um, but even then, up that high, it's going to be incredibly marginal, and it's going to be a very, very wet snow, if anything. All right, let's see here. Dry air masses at different levels, so no moisture clouds, but fair amount of shear. Um, Columbo's awesome. Peter Falk was so great in that. Oh, I agree. One more thing, smile. Yes, I get a kick out of it. I'm sorry, I just see this. I can appreciate the kind of like the Italian vibe in it. And like I'm like, yeah, this guy's. Yes, I love how he messes with people because that's how I mess with people. So I enjoy it quite a bit. So especially when I'm starting to ask questions and someone's trying to screw around me, I'm like, all right, I got you. No worries. Um, no, that's true too. Dry air masses at different levels, so no moisture clouds, but fair amount of shear. Yes, I agree that I have been seeing that more, but I don't know if it's anything that is more than normal. That's what I'm trying to say. Um, so I have to look into it to see if it's anything that's unusual. I might not have been focused on it all that much, but I'll definitely look into it. The show had a great guest actors and actresses as villains as well. Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, it's just been this is, yeah. Well, yeah, she's much better. I have no clue about actors or actresses. She's the movie. Like if we did Godzilla movies, I'd be able to point everyone out and explain like this guy was in this one and this one and this came from. But she's much better in music and in movies. Like there are artists I just don't pay attention to, and she's like, you just listen to this person and you don't know who it is. I'm like, I don't know, but she's very good at that. And then you pick out all the guest actors and stuff. I have no clue, but basically, you bring up a lot of the older movies, like a lot of the movie classics that I never like. You are able to pick them out to know that I'll actually like them. So we enjoy what was that? We saw that Mad World. Yeah, that was like a lot of fun. That was crazy. And there's other ones, and then I'd show you a good Godzilla movie. My favorite Godzilla movie of all time is Son of Godzilla because it combines Godzilla and weather control. So I enjoy it quite a bit. Maybe the turbulence is really just Boeing falling apart while in the air. I wouldn't rule it out. God, that's one stock I won't buy. That is for sure. And with that, hey, we're closing in on the night. So we got our rainstorm. I think the worst of it's going to be Friday night to Saturday morning. The rest of the weekend is pretty much unsettled and damp, but not a complete washout. But if you have outdoor plans, at the very least, especially if you're in sports, baseball, softball, field's going to be ugly. So be prepared for that. In soccer or football, same thing. Other than that, it shouldn't be too bad of a weekend if you don't mind some damp conditions. So we'll be back as always for next week, unless of course something changes. I'll let you know. But in the meantime, stay safe out there.